So this video looks at how to create the core conditions for growth. And today we're going to look at for the first time at a more kind of green preference energy strength, which is around creating the conditions for growth. So how do you create an atmosphere and an environment in which people thrive? Can you think of times when you have taken on some sort of new kind of challenge, or when you've needed to gain some understanding or some skill, and you really feel like you've succeeded in it? Can you pause the video just for a minute or two to think, when have you learned best? And I imagine that some of the things that you'll have come up with in answer to that question are thinking a bit about motivation, when you know that you're motivated to learn because there's something in it for you, there's something that you want to gain from it, whether that be learning to drive a car, whether that be learning skills required for a promotion, or whether that be, I don't know, learning how to potty train a child as a parent because you don't want a mess on the floor. So we need to be motivated. Another thing that you're likely to have come up with is that you need to feel safe enough to take risks, that learning requires risk. A famous writer actually described it as learning anxiety, that we're all kind of confronting our learning edge, we're confronting the unknown, we're taking on new challenges when we learn, and that's always risky to some degree, so we need some safety. We also need to feel free to explore whatever comes out. So if we're in a place where you think you've got to you can only say the right answers, you're not free to fail or get it wrong, that isn't a creative environment for learning. Another thing that we need is an environment where there's faith in our abilities, where you've got somebody who's clearly believes that you can do it, which actually helps you connect and engage with your own self-belief. Sometimes it's really helpful being surrounded by other people who are also learning, who are also taking risks, or maybe they've learned this already, but the fact that they've been through it and they've managed to transform their potential, their abilities, encourages us that it's possible. They can be inspiring role models, that can also be important. And last of all, on my list anyway, is that the task is not too big and overwhelming. But Carl Rogers said, individuals have within themselves vast resources for self-understanding and for altering their self-concepts, basic attitudes, and self-directed behaviour. That links with what we're thinking about today in terms of creating these core conditions for learning, because he said, just like we as coaches believe, that people are their own best experts. And he came up with this term, unconditional positive regard, to describe the kind of environment that the client needs to thrive. One of the ICF competencies, cultivates trust and safety, is described as partnering with clients to create a safe, supportive environment that allows the client to share freely and maintains a relationship of mutual respect and trust. How does that show up? How is that demonstrated? We're going to come in as the coach with an awareness that it's an equal partnership. We're going to have awareness of their client's uniqueness, so we're not going to try and mould them into our way of doing things. We're going to come into it aware of their talents and that they are talented and full of creative potential. We're going to come into it aware that they are insightful and have the ability to generate new insights, and they're creative and they're resilient. So we're really coming in full of faith in their human potential. And if we're not, then we're not going to be in that quality of unconditional positive regard before a coaching session, like a checklist. Do I believe all these things about the person that I'm about to talk to? Do I need to remind myself and stir up in myself again confidence and faith about all these things in them? In her book, Mindset, Carol Dweck says, a person's true potential is unknown and unknowable. It's impossible to foresee what can be accomplished with years of passion, toil, and training. And she contrasts the two different kinds of mindset that people can live in. That we can either have a fixed mindset in which we basically believe that we've kind of got genetically determined traits. When we believe our traits are cast in stone like that, it generates what's easiest to think of as limiting beliefs. Well, I could never do that because I'm not that sort of person. If we have a fixed mindset, we're much more sensitive about being judged and failing in different situations because they reinforce fixed ideas about us. So if we fail in one test, then we're not clever, and that sort of is a label that attaches to us for our life. Rather than if we've got a growth mindset, then we see every challenge and every test as just one momentary instance for us to kind of assess where we're at right now. It doesn't determine our future potential and our future success. It isn't a label that attaches to our identity. It doesn't have a lasting consequence necessarily. It is a moment in time, and it actually can give us data to tell us how we should be working better, working smarter, working harder, focusing our efforts. So are we in a growth mindset? Are we in a fixed mindset? And for our clients, are they in a growth mindset or are they in a fixed mindset? If we've got a client who is in a fixed mindset, we're likely to notice limiting beliefs. For example, them using little phrases like, I could never, ... Now we've got an opportunity as the coach to reframe, to gently challenge in a way that can actually help them modify and update their beliefs about themselves. So actually, if somebody says, I could never, if we think that's a limiting belief, we might ask, but what if you could? And help them sort of bypass that limiting belief, engage with the place that they're wanting to get to, and then think about how they could develop their potential with that kind of growth mindset way of thinking to move on, to make progress. They might say things like, I'm not the sort of person who. Again, that's a limiting belief. It's fixed mindset, the idea that our traits are fixed and that we can't change. So instead we could maybe say something like, well, what sort of person does do that? And then think, and how could we develop some of that quality to help us grow in that direction? We might hear them say things like, well, you just have to, don't you? Where does that belief come from? Helping our clients achieve a growth mindset also corresponds to another core coaching competency that the ICF call facilitating client growth. So there are a few thoughts about how we as coaches can lean into that some of those green preference strengths of creating trust and safety, which actually are core conditions for growth.